Terrific.
Hang it. Let's get it.
Woohoo! And I am live now with the other Amy, whose name she taught me to pronounce, and I already cannot pronounce yet. So this is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager and The Consummate Communicator, which are free on download for Kindle all day. And Amy wrote her book. So you're in sales. And I think sales is super tricky and super hard. And I am terrified of sales. Other than a few experiences in high school, I do not have much sales experience at all, Amy. So when I was reading your book, I was really fascinated by some of your techniques. And I thought some of them can be applied in other negotiations and things as well. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit just in general about your book?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me today, Amy. And perfect name, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I started sales on a default, really. I have a psychology degree and needed a job, fell into sales, and quickly figured out that all it is connecting and communicating. So I leveraged what I knew within my psychology world and how my brain works that way into how to really connect with these people and engage and be partners with them within sales. And then throughout that, there's obviously really good techniques and things that come along in training with sales, but we always jump in and out of those flows. So the three main topics within the book are really your cadence. So what's your rhythm? I call it the dance. We're constantly dancing back and forth with our clients. And when we feel like we have two left feet and we're getting nowhere with the client, we definitely feel it. And then when everything is jiving, we feel like we are in a waltz with them, and it's awesome. But we ebb and flow through that. So this has some actionable items to help you get back into that waltz feeling. The other one that's in there is how to get unstuck. Interestingly enough, when I started writing this, I wrote it from back to front, and I thought for sure I was going to write it from front to back. But I got stuck immediately in starting to write it, and I was like, how do I get myself unstuck? And I actually wrote the unstuck part first. So we always get stuck and kind of weighed down in our own stuff when we are, bottled down with either ourselves if we're entrepreneurs, or companies telling us this is your goal and your target goal, and if you're not meeting this, why? All those things. So getting out of that rut a little bit. And then the last one is your presence. So I'm a big fan of nonverbal communication. How you show up matters. How you are saying things without speaking matters a lot within business, within any sort of connection. So the middle part of the book is all around how you can tweak that and do that, not only just now virtually or in person, but even in things like your emails and what you're saying in your content.
I think those are really great concepts. And as you're aware, my second book, The Consummate Communicator, just really focuses on communications and all the different mediums. And they say that for something to resonate with somebody, they have to hear it like 7 times before it goes deep into your psyche. And I'm sure as a psychology major, you've kind of heard and read these studies. So my question, and you really already kind of took this one away, which is great. And it's, such an important part of your book, when you're talking about how do you get unstuck? How do you overcome that? So motivation can be an issue for a lot of people. And so I would really just be interested to know from your perspective, how do you get unstuck? And then once you kind of start in that rhythm, how do you stay motivated?
Yeah. There are a couple of things that I personally do to get unstuck. One of those things is to change everything up. So I will reposition my desk. If you have an area where you can sit on the opposite side of the desk, I challenge you to do it. Maybe stand up for a while. It's all perspective, right? So if we shift our perspective, another weird little trick that I like to do, which I don't know, maybe it's normal, but is to get perspective on a different platform. So we're always sitting or standing, right? So I have a dog. And it's awesome. And I have cats too. And it's awesome to get on the floor with them and sit down. We do this a lot with kids as well. And it just gives you a different perspective. So sitting on the floor for a little bit, maybe while you're reading a book, a chapter of a book, or listening to a podcast, it gets you out of that kind of unstuck rhythm. The other thing that I really like to do is completely change up my format of how I'm engaging. So if I'm engaging over email, which is my cadence usually to start with, I'll have a rhythm and things that I normally say within that. I'll change it completely up. And it never fails that when I do that, I get a response. So just getting out of your comfort zone and out of your box a little bit of your natural rhythm helps with that a lot.
So Amy, when it comes to sales, how do you break it through? How do you give that icebreaker for a sale? Could you go into that a bit? I think a lot of people are just so afraid of the starting point.
Yeah.
People are so afraid of rejection.
Right. You definitely have to be okay with rejection. Know that it's not about you. That took me a while when I started out. It's hard to never get calls back or, have crickets on the other end, or for them to just flat out say no. Couple things with that though, is it has absolutely nothing to do with you personally, right? It's business, and we need to remind ourselves that it is business. The second thing is that a no means no right now. So things might not just jive with their cadence and their rhythm right now. They might not need your services currently, but they might in 6 months. So to me, I figured out, okay, if I have that door closed right now, it's just right now. So how do I keep them just naturally engaged? And it's all in the how. So back to your thing of, people don't love to sell. I can't tell you how many times I've met people, and I'm passionate about sales. I go around saying I
wrote a book about it.
I absolutely love sales. And people are like, oh my gosh, I hate sales. Like I do my job, but I'm not a salesperson. And the thing is that nobody likes to be sold. We all like to be bought. And we've all had a bad experience with sales, all of us on this planet. And I think that it gets a bad rap because of that. But if you think about it, we all are constantly selling daily. We sell ourselves in all the relationships that we have. So if you have your best friends, you have your partner in life, you are constantly selling yourself to these people. It might not feel and look the same as business, because business is a lot more structured and you have all these different quotas and things around it, but we're selling ourselves continuously. When you meet up with your friend you haven't seen for 3-4 months and you're doing a happy hour, you're re-engaging your sales platform. You're making sure that everyone is still vibing with each other, right? I just had this happen a couple weeks ago. Hadn't seen them since January, and it was wonderful to catch up. And we have to get back on that rhythm again. It's the exact same thing with business. So taking it out of the context of this heaviness and this weight around it, and really just thinking about all we're doing is having a conversation. And all you want to do is have a conversation. And that actually could be a really good opener for someone. So if you are looking to engage with a client or a prospect or a company, and you're reaching out, whether that's by call or email, whatever your platform is, the first thing you can say is, I'm just really looking to connect. I'd be really interested to just have a conversation on how things are going and how you're revving up Q4. And that's it. So putting it on them a little bit more, engaging them, being aware and interested in them instead of pushing whatever end product and goal you want is really, really important. We are taught, I was taught this in sales, of this is your quota, this is your goal for the month, right? And this is what you have to hit at the end of the month. Now go do your magic. And we're not really taught all the little hows and nuances in between to get there. So we have this huge weight over our head of this goal, and we forget about all the little hows in between. So this book helps you with that. It gives you those little hows, the little rhythms in between, some ideas on how to do things and engage things differently. But that really is how we connect with people and grow business and partnerships.
So you just really hit on something, and I'm sorry, in the middle of your interview, Amy, I am having an epiphany moment, maybe because you're another Amy. I don't know what happened here, but after listening to several authors today, and an author, it's the same thing. You, in a way, you are doing sales, you're marketing your book, and rejection is hard. But then what I just realized is, how many times do I reject things? How many times do I reject people? And that rejection is normal and healthy so that you don't waste somebody else's time. And I think that we don't think about, we don't want to be rejected, but so often we're rejecting others and we don't recognize that it's a give and take and that there's a relationship there. Because, we get the call from the telemarketer, and we're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this telemarketer. And we're actually rejecting that telemarketer. And that's a hard job. And so I actually did, I was a telemarketer for Olin Mills Portrait Studio for 2 years in college. And it was like, I would just take every rejection call and be like, hey, that's okay. I got another call. I got a whole nother call sheet. And it's about that attitude. So how do you maintain your positivity in the midst of all these rejections?
So 2 parts there. One is to remind yourself that you might not have earned that relationship yet. So back to your point on the telemarketer, that's a really hard one, and you can catch someone on a good day, but most of the time it's because you haven't earned that relationship or that conversation yet. So realizing that that's on you a little bit to do that. And then secondly, to really keep them engaged on things that are about them and interesting about them. You want to learn really what's going on with them and be interested. There's a great quote out there that's to be interesting, be interested, right? So to take it off of what I want to do and what I want to sell, and it's all about me, and really positioning it back to them.
I think that's a really good point about the connection. Like you have to really build that rapport. And there's certain things that we're going to buy no matter what. And a great example from COVID has come up is toilet paper. We all recognize like we're going to buy toilet paper, right? But then there's all the wants and the other things that we have out there that we have to, and then we have to discern brands. So what is your advice in sales of how do you separate yourself? How do you make yourself that premier thing that people want to buy, whether it's they want to buy your book or whether they want to buy your service or your product? Like, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I tell people all the time, you're a commodity. The product that you're selling is a commodity. They can get it multiple places, just like toilet paper. They can choose to go to XYZ store or down the street to this store, depending on their mood and what they want and how they feel about that, right? So how to present yourself a little bit differently is all around you. It has nothing to do with your product. It has nothing to do with your company, and it has nothing to do with your end goals, but it has everything to do with your personality, how that fits in with someone, how that fits in with a business, and how that really relates to their goals. So back to them again. One of the things I really learned early on, I was in a meeting, this is in the book as well, but I was in a meeting, I was about a year in on my client, and I really knew nothing. I mean, it was very clear that I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn right now. It was in this big boardroom. It was super fancy. Everyone was, in suits, and I nailed my pitch. I nailed everything about what I was supposed to say, everything I was taught about our products. And it's expensive, and it was a long sell cycle for what I did. And the CEO looked at me and said, why would I hire you to upheaval my entire company, change passwords, change our systems, do all these things for 25 cents a savings on a click? And I had an option there to either go down the sales path of, because we have the best customer service around and because our turn times are great. And everyone says that, right? That's what we're taught to say. Or I went down this other path of, well, I don't have this person anyway. This is not my client. I'm clearly not onboarding them today. So my comment back was, you absolutely would not hire me for that. But what you would hire me for is me. I'm your rep, and I will be your partner in gaining your goals. I work for you. I get paid by my company, but at the end of the day, I work for you. And that was an epiphany to me of sitting back and saying, I really need to realize that I'm on their team and I'm an extension of their staff. And that's really the way we need to look at it. That how can I create success for them with what I can give? And that's a different way of looking at it than I'd love you to buy this product so I can reach my goal at the end of the month.
No, I think that's super fantastic. And I will tell you that when I created this event, 24 authors in 12 hours, it was like, I had a few people who were like committed. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to like cold author, email a bunch of people who are from connections or whatever. And you're like, am I crazy for doing this? Am I going to do this? And I don't think of it as sales, but after just talking to you for 15 minutes, I'm like, oh, that's sales. That's really what it's about. Mm-hmm. And so it's really so much into this point that we may not think we're doing sales. We may not think, but even sometimes when we're negotiating with, I don't have kids, but when I negotiated with my niece and nephew when they were little, when you're doing this kind of thing, it's really sales. It's really an opportunity where you're doing that negotiation. So you just talked about a time that was great and worked out. And we learn sometimes as much from our failures as our successes. Do you have an example of one like where you're like, oh, that did not go well, but you really learned something?
Just one? Only one.
Only one, right? I mean, it's not like those happen all the time. Just one example.
So we fail all the time, and there's a reason for it. And I call it failing forward. If we just make sure that, okay, well, we didn't get that client today, just today, we might get them in 6 months. Or things didn't work out and a client cut ties with us or isn't, hiring us on anymore. I look back at that and say, okay, why? What happened there? Was there anything I could have done differently? Was it maybe just not a good fit? One that came to mind when you were saying that was it just ended up not being a good fit. That's another really important thing for us as salespeople to learn. We are so tuned with, we need this one, we need this one, we need this one. And just because we have them in front of us does not mean that they're an ideal client for us. And we can break ties with them. And that was better for our business to do that in the long run than to deal with these people, because what happens is that they take so much more energy to just keep them onboarded than to just cut ties. And you're losing all of that energy that can go somewhere else. I had one that was very price driven. So no matter what I did, the relationship was a little rocky. Things were a little weird. We weren't jiving. They were my client for quite a few years, actually, handful of years. And every single time that we came around and started talking, it was always price needs to be cut or we're leaving you. Price needs to be cut or we're leaving you. And I finally was like, okay, then leave, because I can't keep doing this where, we had so much energy involved in this client that really wasn't working. That dance was 2 left feet from the get-go. There was never a waltz with them. So by the time at the end where I finally said, my hands are up, I'm doing this. And I was working for a company at the time, and I went to my boss and said, I'm washing my hands of this one. And he actually backed me and was like, great. If he didn't, I would have said, then it's yours. You can handle them, because I need that bandwidth and I need that energy to focus on the ones that really work and can level up their business and mine. So recognizing that not all the time they're a great fit for you. And that's okay. That's an okay thing in sales, because we're taught that that's not, that everyone's a fit. So backing away from that is a good thing.
Well, I think it's a great concept there, an opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are you missing out on? You're spending all this energy on this client that's not working. How many more clients could you get that are working? And, what's really the value? And we forget the value concept of it. So I'm looking at your book, and I am super excited because part of Virtual Book Festival is about people love to get the concept of free stuff, and free is awesome. So right now my books are available for download all day. If anybody wants, check them out. And so Amy, what about you? How can people get your book, or is there any kind of free offerings or giveaways that you want to do today?
Yes. So they can get my book on Amazon. So they can go directly to Amazon on that, or they can go to my website, which is salesandpresence.com. And I can do a free consult with them if they'd love to just chat, learn a little bit more about this stuff, or if they have questions I can answer. And then my book is on there as well that they can get.
Okay, so salesandpresence.com. Super exciting. And so what does a free consult involve? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, it involves really anything you want it to involve. So I just had one the other day where he wanted to just pick my brain. He's been in sales for years. Wanted to just pick my brain around the presence side of things and really how that works now technology-wise. We've had a lot of conversations lately and trainings lately around how to present yourself virtually still and have it create an impact. That's a huge thing, and it is something that we can still do, which is great. So just having those types of conversations. Another one might be if somebody does need a consultant for business and for sales, we can definitely talk around that. That is my discovery call, really. Again, back to not everyone's fit for everyone. So that's the call to really explore and say, what are you about? What am I about? Let me learn more about you and see if we jive and go from there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think that's really exciting. And I think that one thing that people miss is like when you could walk around the book festival and you could like kind of, just go in and maybe put your business card in for a raffle and all these kinds of things. So I think it's a real challenge right now during COVID. And that's where, in talking to other authors where we're all like, I don't know, how are you marketing your stuff? I don't know, how are you? And I was just like, I think this would be fun, and you never know until you try it. And so it's a great opportunity. And I think that that's the thing for sales too, is you kind of talk a little bit about like, just, you got to take advantage and you got to try things. So what's your advice right now to people who were used to operating in physical space and now we're in this virtual world?
Yeah. So if you're still holding meetings, which I'm sure you are, and they're all virtual, one thing to really hone in on, which I've noticed a lot, is know your platform. So a lot of times, and this happened, early on in March, April, where everyone was just jumping on whatever platform. Most of them were Zoom for a while and just kind of winging it, right? How many times have we gotten on a call and everyone's like, no, you're on mute. Can you unmute, right? And I think right now for businesses, we need to recognize that we're beyond that. We need to know our platform. We need to know how to work our platform to work our advantage. So coming across as a professional and being engaged in that moment really does mean that the platform on the back end, the information and the technology that you have, that. So you're not worried about any of those little logistical things. Now, life's going to happen, right? We can only plan for so much. So you have to wing it on some point, but that's a really good one. The other one is just recognizing that we as humans, we tend to not engage as much virtually, right? We get really comfortable. We're in our own homes now, usually. We're sitting a lot more. We forget that people can still see us. So just being really mindful of the fact that we are still on camera and we're still on and we're still communicating in a lot of ways.
You bring up some really great points. And I actually work in a job where we do not use video most of the time. It is probably 95% of the time on audio only. And one of the things I try to do is imagery to get people to imagine what it would be like if we were back in the physical space. And so it's really interesting because I found that out of COVID, there's kind of like a couple different camps, if you will. Some are like, no, almost all of our meetings are video. Some are like very much audio. Some are like, we've just went to an email culture, which a lot of people seem to be a little bit frustrated with. What has your experiences been with the different platforms, the different mediums, and the best way that works for sales into that environment?
So I would say the biggest thing, just as you were saying, is that engagement side. So keeping people engaged. We didn't necessarily have to do that in a room full of people because people knew they were being watched. People knew that they were going to get called on, those types of things. And now that we're in virtual, that's a little bit different. So really planning those meetings for that engagement break is vital for that. So having that, up front, whether that's a chat feature that people, a question that pops up that people answer, and then 10 minutes in, you have either a poll that comes up or another thing that people want to put in chat, or open it up to a room depending on how many people that you have. But keeping those engagements along the way and those breaks of that along the way within your meeting is really important. And we didn't necessarily do that live. So that's something that we need to incorporate a little bit more within this virtual environment.
That is such a good point, Amy. And we've touched on a lot of the points, but I feel like we kind of almost went backwards in your book, just kind of like you wrote it. Is there anything you want to touch on about cadence before we end the session?
Cadence is interesting because we all have a cadence. We all have our own rhythm that we work. And really the key with cadence within sales is you can start off with your own cadence, but then you quickly have to find where your potential client or your client's cadence is. So that means that if they get back to you via email all the time and you call them and you leave them a message and they respond by email, that's their cadence. Their cadence is email. So stay within their cadence. Don't go out of theirs. A lot of people now are on social media. So if you are finding that someone you're really wanting to engage with is constantly on LinkedIn, message them on LinkedIn. Don't email them. That's their cadence. So finding that rhythm with them that works best for them. Now, obviously, that could be daunting if you have a lot of people that you're trying to engage and that you're working on with clients. So also giving and taking on that, right? So that's a really good thing for a platform for people that you're really trying to engage, that are not clients yet that you're really focused on with your potential. Your current clients is a different matter. They're usually expecting you to just call or email. Every once in a while, again, change it up, get unstuck, message them through LinkedIn, or if they live on Facebook, just to say hello, nothing important, just so you can have that re-engagement. But that's really what cadence is about, finding your rhythm, finding that cadence within them. Obviously, within sales, we're taught, how many times do you need to call? How many times do you need to have touch points? That is part of your cadence. But out of that cadence, finding those different nuggets to engage.
Thank you so much, Amy. I'm about ready to wrap up. I just want to say I had no idea how much this book would actually impact me because I'm not in sales. And I think so, like you read it and you think, oh, this is for salespeople. But, from the title. But then once I actually started like kind of just going through it, I went, wow, so many of things actually apply to me in my day-to-day job, but also as an author. So I really want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Amy. It was wonderful. And you thought out of the box in doing this whole thing today. So kudos to you. It's a great way to engage.
Great. It's been wonderful. Have a great day, Amy.
Thanks, you too.